Run it. I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground.
All right, so how about we just launch into whatever this project is? Welcome to episode 1 of, we're going to call it the Untitled Project for right now. Again.
The Untitled Project again.
Redux. I think we're going to get into actual content here, but we should probably introduce ourselves first. I am Brian Barrera, my co-host.
Viet Bryan.
And the third member of our traveling party, David Bridges, is unavailable tonight, but we've just been brainstorming stuff tonight. We did some stuff earlier in the year for our traditional once-a-year triple triangle, Texas Triangle Trio.
Texas Triangle Trio, yeah.
Season opener, as is the case typically, our audio didn't work out. There's all kinds of technical stuff, but really was just trying to get together on getting a project back on the air, doing something, having some more toys to play with. Like we've got a new set, we've got some lighting, we've got a camera. We're going to try and do more stuff, and maybe eventually in the future get to streaming.
Yeah.
But today's really just about trying to figure out the mechanics of how things do while having maybe sort of an interesting conversation, times like a little behind the scenes. That's what I'm thinking of today.
For sure, yeah. So if we want to like kind of walk this back, is the Untitled Project Redux. This is something that we tried to, we were brainstorming, we were trying to get something off the ground. This was early days COVID.
Oh yeah.
Now, we had done stuff before, we worked on projects before. David, the third member of the Texas Triangle Trio, and I did a podcast called Bros, which was a UFC, MMA, we did some boxing, kind of combat sports centric podcast. Brian would often guest star on there and kind of jump in, talk some fights with us. And then we kind of started doing a project called the Movie Manual.
Yep.
And we watched the movies, and so it never happened, but so we were.
Well, then I went on and did I Live the 90s with
you
my
did
good
I
friend
Love the
Alan.
90s, and yeah, phenomenal podcast. You guys like with that. Again, that was during COVID. So
Yeah,
the Movie Manual was actually pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
And we were about to do one for COVID, and it would have been the season of cruising, and it was supposed to culminate in Top Gun, which is a shame that never happened because Top Gun was incredible.
Okay, we're gonna do a mini episode because I was like poo-pooing a redo of Top Gun.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know why we're doing this. The first one was perfect.
Yeah.
The only thing we could do is tarnish his legacy. And man, was I wrong.
Or redo it, but like great. I mean, I don't know. That has to be one of the best follow-up sequels to a movie, and it could just be like how it was unexpectedly really good.
And so far apart because like Terminator 2 is up there. I mean, if we wanted to rail some off, there'd be some, but like,
Yeah.
I think it's sort of the way that like the impressiveness of both like the Spurs and the Patriots like first and last titles, like the fact that they were so far apart is what
Right.
makes those dynasties amazing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what's so
No,
great about
that's a
like
good analogy. Yeah,
what's
yeah.
good about like Top Gun is just like how far apart but still both being great, but the same actor.
I saw this picture of him where it was like they photoshopped it so it looked like he was having a conversation with himself in the hallway. And man, he looks like maybe 10 years older than like himself in like the 80s. The guy is an ageless one. I mean, Scientology is like if not anything else, like they give you like he's got like access to some great supplements and he keeps himself in good shape. Driven. He's a very driven person, and like he took this on as like a passion project. So I think maybe we should just like trust in Cruz to deliver.
Trust in Cruz. I think that's a great way to go about it. I think what you're seeing here is kind of what our work process is like, and trying to figure out like we're kind of all over the place, and part of it is like we're going to work through a lot of stuff here and figure out where we want to go with this thing because there's a lot of really cool ideas, and I think it's trying to figure out like which of those things we're gonna follow and deliver on.
For sure, yeah. So I watched. I don't know if you watched the Always Sunny podcast.
I do not, but I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of the Office pod. I'm a big fan of these people sort of still living in those things that fans like.
Yeah.
And giving the behind the scenes and give like
For sure. So they did a behind the scenes. I think this was from their recent live episode, and the thing was Rob McElhenney. One of the co-creators of the show. He plays Mac on Always Sunny. He also has his own show of Mythic Quest. And Charlie Day, who plays Charlie on the show, and they're just kind of like giving us a little behind the scenes look. Apparently, getting like really big fights all the time in the writers' room, and like even like the conversation they were having on the podcast, there was tension, and like Mac was kind of saying like, I want to fight you right now, like this is something I want to, like verbally, like not, they're like really good friends and they love each other and stuff. But what was interesting to me is they said that like probably would not work together. Like if they were in a professional setting and someone came at them like that or pushed back like that, it would just probably mark that as like, we're incompatible. We professionally can't work. But because they're friends, they kind of work through it and they're able to create like a, long-running television show, beloved by the fans, extremely successful, and like a very cool underdog story in that it started off very lo-fi, very low budget, and then has just had continued success, and they've been able to kind of pivot very successfully with the times. I think the thing with you and I, in some ways, when we're talking about like behind the scenes and when we go this, sometimes there is a little bit like butting the heads and stuff, but I think like there's also like a friendship there that allows us to kind of work through that. So I saw that, I heard that, and I was like inspired by that. It's like sometimes success is just kind of like enduring things that you think like, hey, maybe like this is not something that I can endure. This is not something that I can go through. And just decide to challenge yourself, kind of going through that and then being able to, through that adversity, be able to create something really good. But I just thought that really resonated, especially since we're trying to launch something here. I think that, in many ways, Brian is like a very good like ideas person. And like he can just like, hey, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. And he can like throw like a million things. And in some ways, like those are kind of my strengths too. And also trying to balance out, like we need someone that's like good at like kind of editing down. Like, all right, well we can't do that.
We can't do it all, right?
We can't do it all. We don't have the time. And I think one of the things that like maybe like with the failure to launch the first time was too many ideas, and it was just like it kind of got away from us. And like, also there were other things. There was a pandemic. There was a pandemic. Like I was working crazy hours. You were doing like you were like having to navigate your company through something that was completely unprecedented. So like other things got in the way, but you were able to do a very cool. I lived in the '90s, and of course like biased because like so did I. But it was like really fantastic, and obviously you and Adam had great chemistry. But that's also like you guys were good friends.
And mirroring what you were saying about us, Alan and I had the same things, and I think that's what sort of doing this teaches you. Like, yeah, there are going to be growing pains. You're going to have to work through things. It's not always going to be sunny. Come back for comedy like that.
All right, done.
But yeah, no, I think everything you said, I'm echoing those same sentiments where it's like, there's a shared desire to create here and do something because it's fun. It's fun to do these things, these projects. Well, we wouldn't keep going through them, like to any degree that I've had any moderate success. Like that was a lot of fun to do, but it never was about trying to do, like get followers or get, there's a little bit of like, sort of self-promotion that you just kind of have to do in general. Yeah. And the thing that I really enjoyed about that project specifically was that there was a Facebook group, which is kind of funny because like people are like screaming to get away from Facebook.
Yeah.
And that's not where we thought we'd find ourselves. But if you listen to the people that are like participating in your project or venture, it kind of makes sense that they're all actually on Facebook because it is a show about loving the 90s.
Yeah.
So we're all a little older. It's not going to be fresh. It's not going to be new.
Right.
You've had great success with the MMA podcast and growing a fan base and interviewing top flight professional fighters. Like there have been successes in these things, so I think it's just a matter of time before we figure out what it is we do. But I think the important thing is to just start, which is what we're doing now.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like half the journey is just starting, right? And then it can be really really difficult to really edit down and then give yourself look at that and give yourself direction, but. So the thing that we do with David, we'll kind of go back to at least one of the product offerings that we're kind of looking at. One of the projects that we're going to pursue is a continuation of a thing that we started for a while now, Texas Triangle Trio. Now the thing is, it has been inconsistent. It has been on different platforms, it's different sites. I don't even know if you could there's no way for you to comprehensively find all different. Really?
I found it. The blog. I can look this up. I don't know where this is probably gonna be. I don't even know where this is coming to you at right now. Like this is where we are. We just turned this thing on because we'd been talking for the last 30 minutes.
We're just emailing this to Brian's mom. So shout out to Brian's mom, Vietnam in the house.
I was able to find something through a back channel link again from Facebook because it told me it was like an on this day.
Yeah.
You know, and a couple things have come out of that. So originally that was a blog because at the time, blogs were the thing. We did podcasts because podcasting, but now podcasts are video. Yeah. And that's something that excites me. I think there's a couple of different shows that we've seen and we've talked about, hey, who are we going to try and emulate? Because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. There are things that we like about it. It's like, hey, if we can do things sort of like that, we like doing stuff like that. Yeah. Let's do it in that way, and we have the capacity to do it potentially.
Right. Well, the Podfather is probably Joe Rogan. He kind of his signature was the long form sit down, a fairly unstructured conversation. It was like an interview, but it wasn't like your typical interview where it's like, let me kind of ask you the things about your career. Is more like, hey, what interests you? And he would also talk about things that interest him and just get that person's perspective. Like, hey, what do you think about this thing? And it's not even necessarily in their field of work. I think we talked about the Flagrant podcast, probably one of the hottest podcasts out right now. Andrew Schultz is an incredible comedian. And I think he describes it, he's like, I wanted to create the best hang on the internet. I always thought that was really appealing. And I think people really, sometimes you just kind of want to, kind of sit there and kind of feel like you're sort of, if you're not getting to participate in those conversations or hear those people talk about it, it's kind of nice to have that kind of conversational podcast. And they're just so funny. They're all there are a bunch of comedians on that podcast. And so,
we talk about, this is always going to come back to sports. We always talk about coaching trees.
Yeah.
And it was kind of amazing. Rick Carlisle is known as he's not necessarily a player's coach. He's kind of hard driving.
For sure.
And really demanding, and it worked. He had the right player, he had the right guy.
Yeah.
And then he wore his welcome out. It took a decade, but finally he just was like, hey, it's not working. Right, we can't do this anymore. But that guy's coaching tree was really amazing. There's half dozen coaches around the league, head coaches that came out of off that staff or off of those staffs over the years. And I think back to the Podfather, Joe Rogan, what he's done, and you were talking about these comedian, what he branched out was that conversational. So he's still the only guy that can pull off 3 hours.
Yeah.
And have you listen. Yeah. It takes me 3 days or 4 days, or if he's and now it's really guest to guest or subject matter to subject matter.
Sure. I'm
not really a Joe Rogan file.
Yeah.
But what happened was he sort of made it, and only in listening to those conversations between these other guys, comedians are sort of inherently oh, that guy's funnier than me. That guy's funnier. And it's kind of competitive, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, no, it doesn't have to be. Actually, if we just kind of all we're all friends, and the green room is actually the best.
Yeah.
The thing.
Yeah.
So he just brought the green room sort of out.
That vibe, yeah.
So there's the Bad Friends podcast,
right? Yeah.
Which I like. There's the Tiger Belly, which is the Bobby Lee.
So those are the two Bobby Lee ones.
Yeah, and then there's also the King and the Sting, which is off of the Brandon Schaub, and I know he's persona non grata on the internet, but
Brandon
Schaub and
Dicey.
What was the first one? That was a great podcast. Him and Brian Callen.
Yeah, Fighter and Kid.
That was a great podcast. These are all offshoots of sort of Joe Rogan's coaching tree.
Yeah. No, he's had Brandon Schaub, for all the hate, he's obviously has cultivated an audience, love him or hate him, and is he a great stand-up? No, but he's obviously found some success, and I think when he's kind of in the podcast environment, he's much stronger there, and it does kind of seem like they work the circuit, right? They all of those comedians are friends. They all have their own podcast, and then they just guest star on each other's
Also,
podcasts.
I think we totally missed Two Bears in a Cave and Christina Pushnitsky. Those guys are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like that, you're gonna like us, and you're gonna like this. Like that's kind of what we're.
So what if you like impulsive? What if you like Logan Paul?
You know, like I don't dislike him because you can tell he works hard.
There's a lot of overlap, I think, between his not necessarily his audience and like flagrant audience, but I do think like I would say probably there's a similar male demographic, probably skewing younger. I think like Andrew Schultz is like I don't know if he's 40. He's like
He's our age. He's I think he's your age. He's probably 37, 38.
So yeah, so like like he's like older millennial. And I think like most of the guys with him are probably around like that.
Yeah,
that
cautious.
same,
Yeah.
30 older, and then like impulsive. I think he is like
Early 30s, late 20s, I would say, right?
Yeah.
That's who his demo seems.
I think so. Right. So maybe there's some overlap, but there's a lot of like sort of affirmation. There's a lot of things out there that's kind of like they're very they tell their stories. I think that people are just like a lot more candid like on podcasts, and so like there's an entire culture of like just kind of getting on there, getting onto the camera, and then being candid about like your failures, and then like candid about like why you're successful, and that generates like a lot of following, and I feel that energy and that vibe from a lot of like the successful, especially like the male-driven podcast. That just seems like a huge part of like the identity is kind of like injecting this however we're dealing with like male vulnerability, and that's like in the cultural zeitgeist and how we're dealing with that like in the real world. The podcast is kind of like managing that at the same time, and so like talking about like what they do, what drives them, being very personal. That's like kind of like a thing now.
Yeah.
That you do, like you are your own brand. It's not just like I'm a sports guy, I'm gonna talk about sports. It's also like I'm a sports guy, but I'm also gonna talk about myself, and like you also become part of the product. And I feel like that should like resonate. You're a very driven person.
These are all goals for me. I would love to be in a position that sort of people cared about, because I think before you can really build that, what they've done is they've done a good job of building their rapport with their audience. Their audience knows exactly who they are, what to expect from them after years of following them. I mean, Logan Paul started on Vine.
Yeah.
He was just like, and that's when I never got on Vine. I never did TikTok. I've never done, there's a lot of things that I've just missed out. Snapchat, that I've just missed out just because like it was a little behind me in times. And I was like, well, I'm not there.
Right.
If I was, it would have been right in my wheelhouse and I'd know exactly everything about these guys. But what I saw from him was an interview about his time on Vine, where a lot of people were like, the fun thing about Vine was like, it was 6 seconds. Yeah. You could just record yourself. It could be anything. Yeah. And some people used it and were really good at comedy. Some people were really good at like doing these little snippets, these little tiny skits, like 6 second skits.
Right.
Really good stuff. 6 seconds, whatever. And the interview with him, he was like, I'm willing to execute on this idea 50 times until I get it right. So I'm shooting this same 6 second Vine. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, the lighting wasn't good. Oh, I missed a word. Oh, that pause wasn't long enough. Right. Oh, I missed my flip. Yeah. Oh, the skateboard, like whatever it was. Yeah. He was like, the reason I'm set apart is because I'm going to like continue doing it over and over again. Right. So Logan Paul was not, what I'm saying is not an accident, which is what I thought. It was like, oh, he's a good looking guy that just like was a dumb jock.
No, he's a hard worker. I mean, that's what you're describing. It's like a very like Bruce Lee way of like, I fear not the guy that knows 1,000 kicks. I fear the guy that like practiced one kick 1,000 times.
Totally.
So,
I think that's great, man. This has been fun already. I think this is a good.
We haven't even talked about basketball.
So I think this is good. This is a good primer just for like what to expect. I think we should cut. We should do another. And we should do what we wanted to do originally, which is basketball. Yep. But this should be out there. Whether we ever put this on the internet or not, to be seen. So if you're seeing this now...
We decided to. Surprise!
But yeah, if you like that stuff, you're going to like us. And we're going to have fun doing it.
Hit the ground and it go off.
Cool.
Hit the ground and it go off. Yeah. I can't take no loss.
Artlist.io.
Hit the ground and it go off. Yeah. Hit the ground and it go off. Yeah. Run it. Ooh, I really feel it's my time. Think it's my year. Yeah. I really feel it's my time. Think it's my year.
All right, and welcome to our Texas Triangle Trio segment. The way this is going to break down in the future is we're going to have a segment each for each of our teams. But tonight, we're just going to kind of do one segment. Both teams Rockets and Mavericks. Our third co-host is not here. He would have done the Spurs, David Bridges. I'm your host, Viet Bryan. I'm joined by Brian Barrera, and we're going to just get into it. We're going to start with the Mavericks. And with the Mavericks, it starts and ends with Luka. That is the guy that runs that team. He is the engine that moves that heliocentric offense, and when he does well, the Mavericks can beat anybody in the league. So I just want to start there. Give us a quick lay of the land in a minute or so. How are the Mavericks doing this season? How is Luka doing?
Not good. Terrible. Not terrible. They're super meh, actually. They're 15-15, and they're playing like it. They're super inconsistent. Some nights they look like world beaters. They're taking down the champs. Some days they're looking just like trash and just getting blown out. Like tonight, I think they're just getting taken to the woodshed by the Timberwolves, who are a good team, good young team. Yeah. But that's a team that the Mavericks should beat. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're really predictable right now. Luka's going to get everybody shots and open shots. And I don't know the metric, but like there's some metric out there that like he gets more open shots for players than anybody else in the league.
Yes.
Which is great because he has the ball in his hands the most, he's making the decisions, and he's making the right decision most of the time. If the Mavericks supporting cast are making their shots, they're winning. If they're missing their shots, they're losing. They don't have a true Batman. You asked me about that sort of
They have a Batman. Robin.
Excuse me. They don't have a true Robin. We lost our guy. We lost Jalen Brunson in the offseason. Not mad at him at all. Go get your bag. Little collusion, so I'm a little mad about that because, they hired his dad. It didn't sound like, all these things always get filtered through Shams or Woj or whoever, and you never know how it's going to go down. Right. But it didn't sound like it was totally on the up and up, that we really had a chance. And I don't begrudge Jalen Brunson going. He was a second-round draft pick. He shouldn't have been there. He was a two-time champion, player of the year in college. Should have gone higher. Felt a little disrespected. Everything that Mavericks asked him to do, he did it. He did it well. He emerged last year as that Robin because Tim Hardaway Jr. got injured. They were always jogging. There was always a Tim Hardaway Jr. game, followed by a Jalen Brunson game. Every now and then, Spencer Dinwiddie would kind of throw his hat in the ring. Yeah. And they were hoping that Spencer Dinwiddie would take that jump this year. And sometimes he has, but Spencer Dinwiddie throughout his entire career has always been inconsistent.
Yep.
He had a great year with the Nets. Yep. And then they traded everybody to go get everybody they have now. He went off to Washington. Wasn't a particularly good fit there. I like Spencer Dinwiddie a lot. He was great as a third banana, and he's great as a third banana to get you to the Western Conference Finals. Yeah. He's not consistent enough. We've got your kind of cast off in Christian Wood that can get buckets, that can play, that can make plays, that can shoot the three. A lot to like about him. I know right now it's kind of funny. Fans love him. Something's going on with the staff that sees him every day that don't trust him. He's not getting minutes. He's getting about 28 minutes a game, and he's got the talent to be a 34 to 36 minute kind of guy. Who knows why that's happening? He's on a one-year deal. He's or maybe it's running out. Whatever deal he had is running out.
Last year of his.
So everything that we get from him is great. Again, inconsistent. So that's where we are. That's sort of my 15-15 is the perfect record for them because when you watch them, sometimes I'm furious, and sometimes I'm like, man, this team is awesome, and they are. There's a lot of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in that team.
With Maverick fans, do you kind of look back at some of the pieces that like you've traded off over the season? You got like some of the more minor role players like a Seth Curry, to some of the bigger players, a guy that was brought in to be the Robin to Luka in Porzingis, and then Jalen Brunson. Is there anything about like from Mavs fans where it's like, man, it would have liked to just like kind of run it back one more time with some of those guys with Luka, or is it like the decision to get here is right, we just got to make this work?
Great question. I don't know that there was much more they could do in any of the situations than they did. So it's hard to say they got it wrong in any of those situations. With Porzingis, he couldn't get on the floor. And that's not anybody's fault. I liked him a lot. He liked Dallas. Yeah. But there's only so much that, like, if you're unavailable, you get detached from the team. It's sort of like, I think in the beginning, when he first got here, he was like, name Brandon, like, oh, this guy Luka, and they were kind of like equals. And then a quarter through that year, it was like, no, this is like the youngsters team. Yeah. And you're not there to like stake your claim. So when he came back, he played great. He played great in the bubble. He played great. Like, it was just run his course. I'm not mad at the Mavs for trading that off and feeling bad about what happened. He hasn't played much in DC.
Yep.
So what are you going to do? The Jalen thing, did they have a chance? I mean, I've never been one to whatever gets through and leaked to the media, who knows what the real story is. It seemed like a lot of stuff was already planned for him to go back. He's from the East Coast. He's a Philadelphia guy. He's an Eagles guy. He's an East Coast. His face looks like he's from New York. I mean, he looks hardened, man.
Yeah.
I mean, his game is hardened. Yeah. I love him. I loved him on the Mavs. I really wish we could have kept him. I really wish he wanted to stay there. But I know the things that made Jalen Brunson great for us is the fact that guy needs to run his own team.
Yeah.
And he's doing that this year. I think he's putting up 20 a game this year.
Yeah.
So he made the right call for Jalen Brunson. He didn't make the right call for Dallas Mavericks being the best version of the Dallas Mavericks this year, but that's not on him to do that, So
Yeah.
I have, but it took me a little longer than most to come to the realization that loyalty is not a big thing anymore in this league because I had Dirk.
You got spoiled with Dirk.
Right. I'm totally understanding that watching Luka, excuse me, in a very different way and is he not happy? Because he can force his way out.
Well, that's going to be the narrative. Probably coming up.
It's going to start. So we're getting closer to that. When I see him now, I'm like, is he mad?
Yeah.
Which used to not ever cross my mind ever. We can get into that in a full one. I want to talk about the Rockets a little bit.
Sure.
I think off the top, let's just do a little Wemby talk through the prism and the lens of the Rockets.
Sure. Yeah. Adding the most hype prospect since LeBron, sure. Yes, give me that. 7'4", can hit. We've talked about Wemby before, but for a 7'4", he has quite a bag. I mean, his step back, you shouldn't be able. You say that you shouldn't be able to do that, but here we are, and you know what? It just seems like there are these basketball players that are just so much more savvy than some of their predecessors, guys that can just kind of come into the league, dominate in certain ways. He just seems like he's legit in terms of skills, but then you just look at his size, his wingspan. It's so crazy, but he is bigger than Anthony Davis was bigger than Dwayne Wade. I mean, he's going to be very big on the court. He's going to make big guys seem small. And another guy, we could have had a mini Wemby come into the league already this season for the Thunder and Chet Holmgren. And I just think that those guys, even though they get the label of being skinny, they're going to be very disruptive. And a lot of guys are going to get to the rim and get met by one of these sticks and get rejected. And when you're in the air and your momentum's just going up and you're not pushing forward, there's really nothing getting that ball, and you have to get the touch to get it into the rim. It doesn't matter how much that guy weighs. It's going to be really hard to get over that wall. So extremely excited we're a terrible defensive team. We're terrible in most aspects of the game. We're dead last in the league right now, and we just lost to the Spurs. So we are not dead last in the league. We're dead last in the Western Conference. So by a lot of metrics, we are bad. I think if you look at some of the advanced statistics, this was over, and I say our recent run. There was a little segment there where we won 4 out of 6, which is phenomenal for a team that's only won 9 games. But among those victories were the Suns twice and the Bucks. So some of these were and Philadelphia. Some of these were teams that probably had higher aspirations than trying to land Wemby, right?
Yeah.
So there are things that you could look there and go, okay, that's positive. But yeah, for sure, Wemby on the team. Yes, please.
So let's talk about, there's a little addition by subtraction with you letting Christian Wood go.
Yep.
Send him over. How is Boban fitting with the rest of your roster?
Oh my gosh, that guy is incredible. I don't. Interviewers ask him, it's why are you so beloved? He came to the team, people love. There's chance for him. We get blown out. So
a lot of opportunity.
A lot of opportunity for Boban to get some burn, and I appreciate just how down to earth and how I think he's one of those guys that's just genuinely just kind, and I think he just has that, and it's not it's not like one of those guys that's he kind of has this quirky act, and he's a big guy and he's funny. No, I think he's just a genuinely kind giant, and people just really love him. Yeah, but again, I would like to use that to kind of like segue into a thing that I think Rockets are kind of facing, and Rockets fans are kind of looking and seeing that issue. Roster fit. We have a couple guys on the roster, like a Christian Wood, they're win now players, and that just doesn't really fit with our team right now. We're trying to lose now. We're trying to, but we're still trying to develop. It's kind of like losing the right way, which is like really difficult. I think Rockets fans maybe can relate. It's really weird, like kind of rooting for your team to lose. And I will say probably that's like the biggest division among Rockets fans right now.
Yeah.
There's a segment of the Rockets fans that are like, yes, let's lose, let's get Wemby or get a top pick and build with another top guy on our team. And there's another segment that's like, let's win. Like winning is good. Like winning, like
I'm in that segment. I would be in that segment.
That's good for the culture. And some of the counter to that. That I've seen on Twitter was just looking at some of the other teams that kind of got to where the Rockets are right now, which is like a bad team but has like some young talent that flashes sometimes and sometimes looks like could potentially be a play-in team. You look at like the early 2000 Clippers, the Elton Brand team, they kind of peaked like a year before they should have. They peaked right before the LeBron James draft. And what if they would have just been like the Clippers again, just one more season with Elton Brand, with all those pieces, and they added a Carmelo Anthony, a LeBron James to their team. Instead of being made it to the semis a couple times, got bounced, that could have, you had LeBron to that roster, all of a sudden you're talking about a championship caliber team. So I think that's kind of like the pushback, and it's like, I'm not here to be mediocre. We're here to win it. And so I'm kind of like, hey, we're bad. Let's just lose. If we're gonna win, I would like to win against teams that are at full strength, and I want to win against good teams. I think winning against bad teams doesn't really do too much. It's hard to really judge how we're doing. Victories that show what the young Rockets have learned and where they are vis-a-vis the rest of the league. Those are the victories that we should be aiming for. But in terms of like any given night, if I'm not watching the game, do I want to look down at the phone and see a W or an L? I do want that L. It's not necessarily just.
So we got a couple minutes here. I want to make sure that we get to at least one more thing. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, either roster-wise, where you see the future, where you see this season, like anything you wanted to hit before we punch out and go to our next segment?
I think that as a Rockets fan, you're probably looking, and you should be very excited about the talent that we have on our team, but we do have some questions. We have some players on there that may not be the right fit. At least from the fans' perspective, these are the guys that like get argued about a lot on like Rockets Twitter. I'm talking about Alperen Sengun, who's having a phenomenal season, but what is his fit with some of the other guys out there? And then our point guard, Ken Porter Jr., who just got that massive contract. Again, the way he plays, is it just sort of like his turn, Jalen Green's turn? Is that really the best fit for Jalen Green, or does he need more of a pass-first type point guard to be next to him to really unlock him and get him to that next gear? I think that we should just wait until Luka gets really mad and then trade him and then team Wemby up with Luka and win some championships.
Straight up for Boban.
Straight up for Boban.
Guys, hopefully you liked. That was just a skosh. We kind of breezed through it. We'll be able to flesh that out, because ideally we'd both have twice as much time to talk about either the same number of topics or maybe add a little topic here and there and get a little fun with it. But really good to just chat basketball with you, Viet. Thank you so much for taking some time here. We're going to go away and come back and do a little bit more general chat about the NBA at large. Maybe dig into Wemby a little more just for other teams, what it looks like with the draft and stuff like that. So thanks for checking in, and we'll see you again.
Artlist.io.
Hit the ground and it go off. Yeah, hit the ground and it go off. Yeah, run it. Ooh, I really feel it's my time. Think it's my year. Yeah, I really feel it's my time. Think it's my year.
We're back, and we're gonna go to our last segment of the show, which is where we're just gonna cover the NBA at large. Let's start with the Western Conference. And maybe we just start at the top and work our way down. Grizzlies, we thought going into the season they were going to be good. Complete team. Ja Morant is him. I mean, probably the most exciting superstar in the league right now. I just feel like every single time you turn on ESPN, that dude has like some crazy block or some crazy like dunk. Or I saw this the other day where like he went up for a layup, but like he got knocked off and did like a 360 in the air and still finished through contact. Like he's just sort of 2K. Very exciting.
So 2 thoughts about Ja Morant, and more, not even about Ja Morant, just your opinion of Ja Morant. Whenever you talk about Luka, because everything's about Luka, you always say he's a sort of 3 to 5 player. Is Ja Morant in that same range?
Yes, I think so.
So who are these 3 to 5 players? Because I'm with you there too. Because sometimes I'm like, well, there's nobody I'd want over Luka because of his age and. But like right now, I mean, it's Giannis.
Giannis, Jokic, and Luka, I think, are the 3, and then the next 2 are going to be Tatum and Morant for me.
Even over, so you think Slim Reaper's sort of like just like he's taking that dip now just because like Brooklyn's not competitive, he's just not as good.
I think KD is really good. I think he's right there. I think those 5 guys are just really good basketball players. They're just better than him.
Great.
And then along that like second tier too, you have like guys like Embiid.
Yeah.
Right? Like so you have a lot of like. NBA's got a lot of talent right now. It's a fun time.
It is a really good time actually for us right now just to see. The other thought I had sort of about Ja Morant, and what you're going to learn here is I am very general guy. Viet is very specific guy, which is why we play nice together. And it's really like, as much for me, a learning experience just because like I watched a lot of Mavericks basketball. I don't have the time to really be up on the NBA, but I love the game. I love the sport. I love what it's doing. And just like what you talked about, this talent that is just like, we're going to be all right. Because everybody's like, oh man, Steph's getting older. LeBron's getting older. Yeah, KD too. Yeah, getting old. But like, it's in good hands, man. It's going to be
the young
really.
guys that are coming in are really good, and you see how sophisticated some of these players are at a young age. Trae Young leading his team to Eastern Conference Finals, so young. Luka leading his team to the Western Conference Finals, so young. Yeah. These guys are coming in, and it's crazy. It's almost like we're expecting rookies to, like, what Luka did is unprecedented. It's crazy. I mean, he was putting up on some metrics, he was doing better than LeBron his rookie season. LeBron obviously phenomenal his rookie season. So these guys are coming in and they have a bag. And like Luka, part of it is just like he's a big guy. I don't know if he's grown. I just remember my impression of him, like his rookie season was like, all right, that's like a biggie boy, like 6'5", 6'6", like he's like a kind of James Harden like built dude.
Yeah.
And like, dude, he's like definitely like 6'7" or 6'8". Like he's out there with like power forwards, like rebounding with them and stuff. So like, some of it's just like a size thing, and like that's you talk about the Rockets. Jalen Green struggled his first season with sort of the size and physicality of the league, but then you got some of these guys that are able to come in and just deal with that really well. But I mean, I don't know how you go back. We'll just talk about Luka real quick. You are the Mavs guy, and it makes sense that we kind of like talk about our guys a little bit more than the other guys. It's just weird going back and seeing how we just didn't identify Luka as like that kind of blue chip prospect. I mean, there's just no way the Suns, like, if they could go back down, are like, yeah, man, we're happy with DeAndre Ayton over Luka.
I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember texting you guys draft night and or the night that the lottery came out that year, and being real bummed that the Mavs dropped to 5th because that meant we were out of the running. I think maybe Memphis was who was it for? Somebody was at 4 that year.
Yeah.
That they were going to definitely grab Luka if he was there, and I was like, we needed to get 3rd because we were going to have a chance. Yeah. I think Bagley was up there, Ayton was up there, and there was a lot of like really good. I mean, it's a good year.
Yeah.
But I wanted Luka, and I remember being a little bit deflated whenever we couldn't get there, and I only knew about it because of this one random radio/athletic writer guy that talked about Luka and was like, hey, here, and even watching that, I was like, I am invested in my team. I'm invested in my players, so I kind of had a hard time seeing like, yeah, he's making good plays, but like, and now when I watch all that stuff in the back, I'm like, yeah, Luka was awesome, obviously then, which is why I'm not a talent scout and why I'm doing a podcast with, you.
Well, I think that people, like, when these guys, like, win MVP of a EuroLeague, I think, like, we should start taking it seriously.
Yeah, seriously.
Sengun,
and I think this did do that, because
Jokic,
the funniest thing to me is to watch everything, and there's these super edits, like, the internet is forever, which is amazing. And there's these super edits of, like, well, yeah, it's the second best league, and he's a whatever. And it was, like, all the things they said to hold him back. Yeah. Are now the things are like, well, yeah, obviously he's awesome. Like, he's been playing against grown men for 8 years, and like, it's all the things that are like, yeah, we knew that. It's like, it's a little bit, a little bit of hindsight. This 2020 there.
For sure. I don't know. I've also heard, this is from the old man in the...
I was going to
3,
reference this. Go ahead.
So this was J.J. Redick, who he was on the Mavericks. I don't think he played for you guys. I think you traded for him and he was injured. He said that
Correct.
Luka doesn't look the way you think he does. Like even when he was like a quote unquote fat Luka.
Yeah.
Like he's like when he takes off his shirt, he's actually like a built dude. Like
Yeah.
that dude is a strong person, and
He's
like you look at him,
thick.
he works out. That dude is strong. All right, let's continue on down the list. This is a guy who was the consensus number 1, another super high pick. Not quite LeBron or Wemby level, but definitely like it was
yeah.
palpable. And
Zion
was a
to,
guy seen way over John Morant at the time, right?
Zion to New York was like the hype. Like that's what everybody wanted.
Yeah.
The Knicks. And hey, how do you feel, Zion, that the Knicks didn't get the first pick? Like that was the question they asked him.
Yeah.
Like, are you basically are you depressed? You're gonna have to go to New Orleans?
Yeah.
'Cause it sucks down there.
Again, this is a team that I was really high on going into the year. I just thought, hey, look, they made some noise. They were able to make it to the playoffs without Zion.
Yeah.
They had Zion.
Brandon Ingram's great.
Now, Zion is one of those players from like, it's hard to really gauge where he's at. I think like at the upper level of his abilities and what we project and think, that he's definitely a top 10 player in the league. And even what he's doing now, maybe it's debatable. I think with him, if there's going to be an injury concern. But man, the Pelicans, they got a little bit of everything on their team. They got bucket getters. They have a lot of creators. They have players, good interior defense with Valanciunas. You got Ingram, who can like handle the rock.
They've got everyone's favorite pest, Jose Alvarado.
Oh my gosh, that guy, he's good. He's like Patrick Beverly. He's like Beverly, but like really good. So yeah, I think he's gonna be like one of those favorite players to hate kind of thing.
100%, 100%.
Man, is he gonna win the Pelicans some ball games just with his shenanigans? Really solid squad. Next up, Nuggets. And Jokic doing nothing short of another MVP bid type season. This guy, all he does is like contribute to winning basketball.
He's great.
He can score. He can shoot a little bit. His passing is incredible. He's a plus rebounder. Much like Luka, he is the engine that runs the Nuggets. And the Nuggets have some other interesting pieces on that team. They got guys coming back from injury like Murray, who are still trying to round into shape. Got question marks in Porter Jr.
You know, that's who I wanted in the Luka draft.
That's
when
right.
I thought we weren't going to get.
When you were going to get Luka, you were high on Porter
I was
Jr.
like, I would rather take a
Swing.
swing and risk on a guy like that and sit him out for a year.
For sure.
So I've been watching him, and then I ended up hating him because he started I think he liked a tweet that said, I'm petty.
Oh,
that
you went
said-
to how did you even see that he liked? Did you go and check?
No. They made the rounds. It made the
Okay.
round, or maybe I was on another YouTube.
Yeah.
When you aggregate things, like people find stuff for you.
They found it for
guys
you.
like me find ways to be mad.
You're like, how can I be angry today? Tell me, Twitter.
it was
You're like
something-
Elon Musk. Hook me up. I need some hate today.
It was something about like a 2K rating or somebody's better than somebody else or something like that.
Got it.
And it was liked by Michael Porter Jr. I was like, all right, dead to me. Anyway,
That's it. Yeah.
I like him a lot though. I've always liked him. I thought at Mizzou he got it stank that he had back problems. Like back problems are weird, man.
T-Mac.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh man.
So,
Bless
yeah.
up. T-Mac was so good.
So I think the Nuggets are just one of those teams where like they're going to be that if healthy team. Jokic is good enough. It's like if you have a player like Jokic or Luka on your team, you're probably going to make the playoffs. But for the Nuggets, it's really going to be like the health of those other guys, and if they're healthy, they can hang. I don't know if there's a class of the West. I think if anything, there's a lot of really good teams that like could really just take it any given night. But in terms of like there's just being like this top tier, I don't know.
Can I call a 20-second timeout?
Go.
Is there a better Adidas shoe than the T-Max? Do you remember those black and white ones?
Yo, dude, I got those.
I have them too.
Yo!
Wait, do you have them now?
Yes. Yeah.
That's nice. I just
Oh,
don't.
you had
I
them
mean,
back in the day.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
hooped
Those
them?
are what I played in.
Oh.
They're clunkers. They're huge shoes, but like they're basketball shoes have evolved. But those were the best Adidas shoes ever. I mean, Dame maybe has them. I don't know who else has had a good Adidas shoe. Not Jalen Rose. I mean, not a Derrick Rose. Didn't he rip up his knee in that in the Adidas shoe?
Right, yeah. like Harden's a big Adidas guy.
I couldn't name a Harden. Was Kobe ever an Adidas guy?
Yeah.
Did he have that big?
I had those too.
What with the big like
that looked like a car,
with a
like all
school bus looking one?
Yep.
All right, back to the regular scheduled game. Sure. Sorry, back into the game.
Yeah. Okay.
Should we go over to
your favorite team, the Suns?
Oh dear.
Well, let's do some quick hitters on the West real quick. I'll just give you a team. You give me your thoughts. But the Suns, for real.
Very excited that we all found out how low Chris Paul is. And Mrs. Kanye West or Mrs. X Kanye West.
Oh man,
that's what I think about when I think about the Suns. No, I'm just glad that they. I wish failure on them. I have never seen a paper champ like with bigger like Twitter muscles in my life. Nobody talks up a bigger game when they are up and then just like cowers like little bitches when they're down. So I wish failure on them. I wish they would get.
Guy gave them too much irrational confidence.
Like said that I wish they could be relocated to like Austin, Texas. That would be great. Just another quadrangle.
Yeah, right.
We'll find another word.
Power for sure. Yeah.
So those are my thoughts on the Suns. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. They're pretenders. Man, when we came back against them, they were up 20, like end of the third, heading into the fourth, and like Devin Booker started trash talking Jalen Green, and like, dude, it's like he tore him up. Like, and it's. I mean, you saw what the Mavericks did to them. I think it's hard to psychologically like come back from something like that, but it just seems like that's.
Let's bounce over to the East. Let's hit the top four at the very least. We got the Bucks and Giannis, 21-8 right now.
Yeah, the Rockets beat them. Pretenders.
We actually lost a very heartbreaking game where we ended up missing 7 free throws in a row. 6 free throws in a row? Yeah. 7 free throws in a row. Yeah. Giannis fouled out. And somehow we still managed to choke that game away. And I watched that whole game sort of knowing the ending was coming. But they're going to be there. They're perennials. They got maybe the best player in the world, probably the best player in the world. They're great.
The best player in the world.
Celtics, Jason Tatum is looking like a world beater. He's good. They're good.
Really good. So I'll say this. So Tatum does just seem like to be a tier below like those top 3 guys.
Yeah.
But I will say the Celtics have this weird dynamic where Brown is also really good.
Yeah.
And he's not in those conversations. And I think like the two of them have good synergy. And it's almost like the two of them together kind of like fill in some gaps and like sort of comprise like an MVP caliber candidate component to that Celtics team. They have lost a few recently, I think.
Yeah, 4 to 5.
But they, no, it's a solid team. They added some great pieces over. It's whenever you make it to the finals and then you go out and you add another solid rotation piece, you just have to feel like that's a favorite.
I just learned Blake Griffin is on the Boston Celtics.
Yep. Yeah, and I think he played some minutes for them when they were dealing with some injuries.
They have Mr. Layup himself, Justin Jackson. Never met a dunk he couldn't turn into a layup.
Yeah.
Sorry, moving on.
Yeah. Cavs. Going into the season, I was really high on the Cavs. Again, they have.
They got the trade. They got the one half. They didn't get the Eiffel Tower, the Stifle Tower. Yeah. They got the other half.
Donovan Mitchell.
There we go.
He's balling out. I really like their rookie Evan Mobley. That rookie class is really good.
They beat us the other night, pretty handily too.
So that's a really good team, and
good for them.
They're for real. You got the Nets, who started off looking like they were going to be bad. And Rockets fans don't want to see the Nets do well because we own all of their like literally all of their picks. So, but they kind of turned it around. And you look, when you got KD and Kyrie, you're at least a playoff team. Those are some of the best bucket getters in the entire league.
Yeah.
They're just they're mercurial. They have some things, but KD has for all the stuff that he kind of gets over the years, and I get it, like the joining the super team after your team gets lost, like maybe he's not built like that, like the way fans would want, but he contributes to winning basketball. He's very, very good. He has been one of the best players in the league ever since he stepped foot into the league. Any team he's on is gonna have a puncher's chance. So.
I think the thing about Kevin Durant, as sensitive as he is off the court, is when that dude's on the court, he just hoops. He's just a hooper. He loves the game.
He gets buckets, man. And
he's so fun to watch.
Hard to guard. Wemby may be one of the few guys, once he comes in the league, that can guard that guy. 76ers kind of feel a little bit like they're in pretender territory with the Suns, where they'll be good in the regular season, but I don't know how I feel about them in the playoffs. Now, I like Tyrese Maxey. I think he's a baller. Harden, I think his obituary is a bit like premature. He's still putting up like good numbers, but he's definitely, it does feel like, and especially as a Rockets fan, I saw him at his peak. He's definitely taken a step back. Embiid is, all he's done is play MVP to slightly below MVP caliber basketball. So again, you would think with just those guys alone, they should be able to make some noise, and I think their record indicates that they can. They're right there in the thick of things in that playoff hunt. Knicks doing surprisingly well.
I think. I mean, good for them, I guess is all I can say. Good for them.
Who else here? I think the Heat are probably my biggest surprise. Like, why did they take such a drop after being Eastern Conference finalists last year?
Totally.
The Hawks, I think, are dealing with some injuries, but you have to be disappointed if you're a Hawks fan, adding a big piece like Dejounte Murray, but still kind of like being a borderline.
There's those waters aren't calm though. I think there's the issue with Trey taking a game off in the last week or so, and what amounts to maybe he just had a fight with the coach, like just a difference of opinion and like. Right. Well, I'm going to take my ball and go home, or hey, don't come to the game, or hey, you're not going to start, or basically, my guess is Trey did something that went against, and is like, hey, the rule for that is actually you got to come off the bench, and Trey was like, yeah, I'm not going to come off the bench, so I'll just skip that game, basically. That's totally opining, but that's the only way that something like that goes down, like why a guy would just miss a game.
All right, yeah. Okay, I'm going to hit you with 3 quick questions. I want 3 quick answers from you, all right? I'm going to go through the pages, so I'm not going to talk about them. I want to talk about one of the players I really like, Halliburton.
Okay.
So we got guys like Luka. Harden kind of, started Westbrook, where they were like the scoring champion, but they were also like a lot of assists and like, again, that heliocentric offense. They are kind of the de facto point guards of their team. But in terms of like that old saying, the pass first point guard, is Tyrese Halliburton, is he kind of taking that mantle like Chris Paul had it for like the longest time? Is he like the best like pass first point guard in the league right now? Because like if you're talking about the best point guards, Curry's going to still be in that discussion. You just have so many.
Yeah,
really
they're
talented point
scoring.
guards, but if you're talking about like a pass first, has he taken
He's
the
a
mantle?
facilitator, distributor.
Yeah, is he the best? I really like
coming
him.
at me cold. I would have to like, sure. I'm not willing to say like, no. There is a guy that is absolutely better at doing that thing than Halliburton. So I'll allow it. Yes.
Is it time to blow up the Bulls?
I don't even know what they're doing these days, I guess. So probably because it's not working. It's very clearly not working. Yeah. So they're not particularly young. Well, I mean, I don't know. They seem to be stuck in a limbo. This is their, there was a couple seasons, everything is back to the Mavs for me. Everything is back to the Mavs. They're in that position where like, you could see a world in which they could do something, but even that isn't going to be enough to win it. So the answer is probably yes. Okay.
And then a very similar thing with the Wizards. Like, what are they doing?
I think they're losing a lot of basketball games. I feel like, you know what, if I can like sort of like hijack this question. If we can find a way to sort of bring our home team Wizards, we're based here in Washington, D.C. Yeah. We're all Texans. But we all live here in Washington, D.C. area. We should sort of like make them our de facto team and know more about them and sort of maybe have a segment about them. Sure. But it's hard to do when I think they've lost like maybe 10 in a row, 11 in a row, something like that.
Yeah, they got these young guys that just have never taken that next step.
Well, the problem is anybody hitching their wagon to, who's the guy from the Lakers, Kuzma. Like nobody, he's on my irrational confidence all-stars. Like he's the irrational confidence Hall of Fame. Right. I think there was some stat earlier in the year where it's like if Kuz scores 30, like they're like 8-0, but he's only scored 38 times. So like, all the other games that he doesn't, they're like, 1-12 or something absurd.
Right. Yeah.
No, they need to do anything else. I think they tried what they could. Some franchises are just snake bitten. I think Sacramento's one of those franchises. I think maybe Indiana might be one of those franchises where it's like, no matter like they can have these little stints of like popping, it's just not going to happen for you.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about DC.
Okay.
I got to go to a game this year though. Great experience. I mean, I love the stadium. I love getting down there. I love everything about it. It's a real shame because it just feels a little flat for some reason.
Yeah. Is it Mavericks game?
Yeah, it was a Mavericks game. They beat the Mavs. Kuzma scored 30.
Wow.
Actually, Kuzma had like a Kobe game and scored 40 almost.
See, and maybe you're just like you actually just secretly want Kuzma on the Mavs. That's the key to the winning for. That's the
Kuzma
key.
for Luka straight up. I mean, I would, if we're gonna be honest.
Yeah.
I would 100% take that.
Kuzma for Hardaway?
No, Kuzma for Luka. Then I could watch Luka every day. I've gone on record as saying this might I've always oh, how could you be a LeBron? Because there's these LeBron fans that follow LeBron around like they're not Cavs fans,
you're
they're
a
not
Luka
whatever.
fan.
I might leave with Luka wherever he goes.
Hey, you can get that Wiz Luka jersey.
He's gonna go to the Heat, and I'm gonna just have to kill myself. Awesome, man. Well, that was a super segment, guys. That's how we're gonna finish this one off. Unless there's anything else that you want to get to before we go.
I was gonna ask you quick hitters, but I think we really covered everything. It's fun. It's a fun season. It's kind of weird, from my perspective, because my team just has absolutely no chance at doing anything, and there's a completely different race that we're going for. But there's a lot of, especially in the Western Conference, I just feel like there's a lot of parity. I think there hasn't been a top person that has asserted themselves, and I think Golden State, either injuries or their slow start, have not kind of been
I think they're just disinterested.
Yeah, but just coming off a championship win, this does not seem like they're that team right now. And maybe things turn around for them.
Anthony Davis is out, by the way, too.
Anthony Davis is out just when the Lakers are starting to kind of maybe right that ship. And here's the crazy thing: that pick is owned by the Pelicans, so it could be that the Pelicans get Wemby if the Lakers end up getting the #1 pick. And wouldn't that just be
so juicy?
Wouldn't that just be
So juicy?
Oh man, that would.
Well, that's an ender. Let's think about that. Let's barbecue that.
Think about that one. All right. My name's Viet. This is Brian. You can check him out. Where can they find you on Twitter?
Brian.thomas.Herrera. Good luck finding that, but it's out there on Twitter.
I'm Viet Bryan. You can find me on Twitter at
See you guys.
I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, I really feel it's my time, think it's my pen ready. Used to hold